Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's web conference, Dynamics 365 for Field Service Enhancements. My name is Michelle and I'll be your moderator today. We are recording on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. If you do not consent to being part of a recorded session or are not an employee or resource, we ask that you disconnect your browser at this time. Attendees may access the web conference recording and the deck at the same registration site within 24 hours. We also encourage you to use the messages panel at any time to ask questions regarding content or to request support. To do so, just click on that messages button at the bottom of your screen, type your question into the white text box, and click on send. Our presenter team will be responding to your questions during the event via text, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A portion at the end of the session. We also use this messages tab to post announcements to the audience, so please take a look there for some important information regarding the event. Our event production team strives to be a leader in delivering online content. Please help us reach this goal by providing feedback. At the end of the session, I will put a survey URL in that messages tab. Simply click on that URL, enter your email address, and select your responses. We do appreciate your feedback in this. And thank you for your patience during these announcements. There will be a brief pause while I start the recording. With us today from Microsoft, we have David Clark, Program Manager, Eamon O'Brien, Program Manager, and Jason Cohen, Senior Program Manager. Thank you so much for joining us today. Without further delay, David, you now have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. So hello, everyone. I am Dave Clark. I lead technical readiness for field service and all related solutions such as Universal Resource Scheduling. I'm here with my colleagues Jason Cohen and Eamon O'Brien, and we'd like to talk about the field service updates and the mobile enhancements that were part of the spring release that was released and what will be released as part of the fall 2018 wave. So some things have not been released yet, and we'd like to note that everything is under NDA, and please do not share on any social media or externally until they're released. So we're going to start with talking about the field service updates, then talk about the mobile updates, and then we'll have the last 15 minutes will be Q&A, and feel free to either speak your questions or put them in the chat. So for the field service core solution, we've had a slew of new features starting in the spring with unified client interface, and all the way through in January, we're going to have entitlements rolled out for the field service solution. And for mobile, we're going to be talking about 3D content for customer assets, which has already been released, and all the way through to background location sharing, which you'll see in January. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about each of these features, and we're actually going to have Jason and Eamon demo them after. So starting with the field service core, back in spring 2018, the biggest change was that field service was now entirely on the unified client interface. And for those who don't know, this is a new user interface. It's a new way of navigating through Dynamics, and it has a lot of improvements to the way you access entities and the way you interact with forms. It incorporates responsive design principles and has optimal viewing on any size or device. It adheres to more accessibility standards. And the way that you would get this would be to simply upgrade your field service solution, and it's available after 8.0. So you'll need Dynamics 9.0, and then you need to upgrade field service to 8.0. And one thing that's important about this is the custom controls framework, and that's the way that you can visualize different fields to make them more interactive, such as a toggle switch for a yes-no two-option set, or different ways of displaying multi-option sets, or sliders, or different things like that. And this is something that we've had the ability to do on the mobile app, but now with the UCI framework, we can have some of those same ways of interacting with fields on the browser. Along with this, you'll notice when you upgrade to the latest version that Connected Field Service solution comes standard with the field service solution. So underneath all of your field service entities, such as work order, schedule board, you'll see IoT Connected Field Service entities, such as IoT alerts, assets, devices, and commands. So one thing that's important about this is it's a strong message of what IoT means for the field service roadmap. We used to say that no field service discussion should take place without talking about scheduling features and the mobile solution. And now we're adding on connected field service, that you really shouldn't, if anytime the field service discussion involves anything that has to be installed, maintained, or repaired, it should also include a connected field service discussion. And one step that we've taken is made it easier to do this by shipping it as part of the solution. So some of you are familiar with the field service solution, and some of you have yet to dive into connected field service. But just at a high level, here's what we're talking about when we're talking about what's shipped with field service. So the first part is what's called IoT alerts. And these are the notifications that are sent from IoT Central or IoT Hub based on the telemetry sent from sensors and devices. Now, rather than take every message that's sent from IoT Central or IoT Hub, what it does is it really just takes the anomalies and the ones that require attention, whether that be a customer service case or actually going all the way to a field service work order. So think of it as anomalies that are coming through and are being sent to Dynamics. A big part of it is devices, and these are you can think of a device as a sensor. It's all the internet connected sensors that will send telemetry. Now, the bridge to traditional field service is assets. When you connect a customer asset to a device sensor, then this is what's displayed here under assets. And the idea here is that one asset can have many devices or sensors. And then lastly, you'll also see commands. Commands are actions that you can take from Dynamics 365 to the device. An example would be to remotely reboot a device. And this uses a combination of Flow, Logic Apps, and Dynamics workflows to communicate with the devices. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason Cohen, who's going to speak about some of the other updates to the Field Service Core solution.
Thanks, David. So good morning, everyone. I'm Jason Cohen. I'm a PM over the Core Field Service solution, and a couple of things I'm excited to talk to you about today. So first, Solution Health Hub. This is an in-org diagnostic tool that enables any solution maker or any maker to influence the continued healthy operation of their org. Effectively, what we enable is the creation of a rules set that can be triggered by an admin and can be shipped. The actions can be shipped as part of a solution. The rules are records. What this will enable from Microsoft first-party app perspective is we will begin shipping rules with lots of our first-party apps. The idea being where we see common issues, hopefully we can help organizations resolve those more easily rather than having to raise a ticket and go through the support process. The thing that's worth noting here is that this isn't specifically a field service function, although field service team was deeply involved in building this. But coming in January, we will be shipping this as part of the solution deployment. It will be a separate solution, but will come with the package. In it, we will also have our first set of rules, and every time we release, we'll likely release additional rules that will help administrators of field service solutions continue healthy operation of their organization. Can we jump to the next one? So multi-resource scheduling, if you've already upgraded to version 8.2 of field service, you might have already seen this. It's worth pointing out here that this is already been available, but the sort of true value of this, the sort of capability that we're introducing here, is what we previously had with field service was the ability, obviously, to help schedule individual resources. We didn't stop you from adding potential for additional resources, but we didn't support that natively. But what we're now enabling with the multi-resource scheduling is the concept of building an incident type that would require multiple resources to satisfy the work. I'll show that in a moment. But we're excited about it. It's very cool and enables, I think, a lot more flexibility. I'll jump to the next one. If we look, so we're talking about this also has been released in 8.2, although maybe you may or may not have realized this. This is a concept of manual inventory journals. Previously, inventory journals were, and they still are, kind of a custodial entity that we use to move things back and forth, or to sort of progress the life cycle of inventory. That's still true, and we still use it for that purpose, but now we enable folks to manually create these, or through integration create these. What we think this offers is effectively makes it much easier for one-off inventory correction actions. And then what it also enables is, I think, opens up the integration story much more easily. Not out of the box, I should say, but the F&O integration template that Microsoft has built does take advantage of these entities, but any integration could also take advantage of this function. I'll show that briefly in a moment as well. And then SLA for work orders. So this is an exciting one. What I think this connects the dots of a number of things that already existed. So we had, for a long time, we've had the concept of SLA. So SLA, what you could create an SLA, again, enable SLA on any entity, nearly any entity. And what that would allow is an organization to define certain time windows and milestones by when they had to be completed, or success criteria had to be met. That exists still, but previously an organization could create an SLA that they would like to drive scheduling, but out of the box we had there was no connection to the scheduling tools that we offered. So what we've now done is we've connected the concept of SLA, which existed previously, to functionality that our scheduling tools respect. So if you utilize the Schedule Assistant or the RSO and have an arrival time related SLA defined, you would see that it would drive the time to and from promised, which will drive scheduling, which is super useful, super powerful in terms of organizations that need to get technicians onto a site by a particular time to meet their contractual obligations to their customers. It is also worth noting SLA can respect business hours. I'll show that in a moment as well. Entitlements, I won't show just yet. It's still being finished up, but it should be available in January. The idea with entitlements is based on a number of factors, including the billing account, the service account, incident type, customer asset, a new entity called customer asset category, and product or service. The idea is that you can effectively drive specific entitlement application and pricing down to a work order product or service. Now we think this is likely to be the beginning of a journey where we will add additional functionality over time. But at the moment, the way it has some functionality that allows to drive the specific price list and discount percentage based on what is applicable for a particular work order product or service record at the work order product or service level. Like I said, I won't unfortunately be showing that today, but the concept is hopefully understandable, and you should see that ship in January. With that, let me walk through a couple things here. So what is pulling up here is a requirement group template. So the idea, what I'll be showing is the multi-resource scheduling capability. So on the requirement group template, you can define a set of resources that would be required. So on this particular requirement group template, which is very generically named to install, we're saying we require 2 resources, one of which has this assembly repair skill, the second of which has this assembly maintenance skill. So the idea here is, if I look at a work order with this incident on it. So I've defined this requirement group as part of my incident type, and I should have had that pulled up, but I can pull that up quickly. So on the incident type, there's this new concept called incident type requirement group, which connects the incident type to that requirement group template. So when I go back to that work order and I push the book button, and I won't navigate back for the purposes of our demo, I've already pushed the book button here. What we see here is a number of resources, or a number of configurations of resources at various times that can meet that particular work order requirement. So in this case, Edgar Dominguez, these guys both have the same picture, Edgar Dominguez and Norbert, or Edgar Dominguez and Ricardo, at different times could satisfy those 2 particular requirement configurations. So they have the various skills necessary. You can see that they have different travel distances. The system does take into consideration their different points of origin, and what it aims for is for them to both arrive at the same time. So regardless of their differences in travel, their start times should be set to be the same thing. One thing worth noting, RSO does not yet respect or schedule these automatically, but it's in the backlog. But from a schedule assistant perspective, very powerful, very easy to use. If I move to the concept of manual inventory journals, which I covered briefly. So inventory journals always existed. As I said, we used them for lots of things to move inventory between, through its life cycle. But with the concept of manual inventory journals, we can now create one manually, as I said, for one-off correction standpoint of inventory levels. Perhaps a particular set of inventory was damaged and you need to take it out of circulation, or some things were stolen after an inventory account or audit. You determined that you actually have a lower level than you expected, so you could manually adjust that with relative ease. This is also very useful from an integration standpoint. So I can set the journal type to drive the inventory level, the inventory type. So by updating one of these and the quantity, I would see my product inventory for this product at this warehouse adjusted appropriately. Finally, let me show SLA, which will take a few moments. Here we go. So SLA, as it always did, you define your SLA. This is, as it's always worked. So in this case, I've created an SLA that has multiple SLA details. So what in this particular SLA, I'm saying it's related to the work order. It's applicable from a particular time. In this case, it's applicable from created on time. So if the work order is high priority, I'm saying that I must arrive within 2 hours. If it's not high priority, I can arrive within 8 hours. If the work order is high priority, I must resolve it in 8 hours, and if it's not high priority, I have 2 days to resolve it. So what I'm pointing out here, which is important, is only these two should drive arrival time. These two are just as SLA always worked, which is very functional, very useful in terms of measuring success for a particular set of conditions that might be contractual to the customer. In this case, though, these two should drive arrival time. So let's take a look at that. So if I create a new work order and I apply my default SLA, what we'll see once I save this. So as I save this record, what we'll see here is the SLA. We'll see a couple of SLAs pop up here. It's worth noting we don't ship SLA enabled by default on work order as part of our solution. We expect that if it is useful to an organization, they will enable it. Once they enable it, they would want to add the SLA field to their form and potentially these timers. But the rest of our functionality, the rest of the story lights up. This is all as it always worked, but our additional functionality is useful here. So you'll note that my work order arrival time KPI is indicating that I have to arrive within 8 hours. That was what we defined in the SLA that we saw earlier. What we'll note, and it is an asynchronous process, so I'm going to refresh this form, asynchronous to ensure that it's as performant as possible. So if I look here at my settings, we'll see these fields now reflect the arrival time window that is defined by my SLA. So I created this at 9:22 a.m. So that's what's created on, is what we saw as our early sort of parameter for time from promise. And because it was not high priority, I am supposed to arrive by 5:22 p.m., 8 hours later. If I update the priority on this to high, which now re-triggers my SLA, if we take a look back here, we'll see that this has been updated to reflect the new arrival time requirement. If I refresh, because as I mentioned, this is asynchronous, and if I push the book button, it would likely have already been considered, so that shouldn't be an issue. But we'll notice that my window is now different as well. So we can see that I had same arrival or same early parameter as was created at 9:22, but the time to promised is now 2 hours because it's a high priority, and that's in line with my parameters on time to promise. Let me just quickly point out one more thing. The way that this works, we will ship 2 KPIs out of the box. The work order arrival time and the work order resolution. However, if an organization chooses to add additional arrival time KPIs that should drive arrival time. Perhaps as an organization, I would like to have a separate KPI for high priority work orders and for medium and for low, or whatever the scenario is. For different customers, I want different KPIs. Those can all be defined here as SLA KPIs that drive arrival time, which once they are defined here as driving arrival time, when they are determined to be applicable through the existing SLA functionality, it would drive the time from and to promise. If multiple SLAs, I should say, drive that, we would apply the most restrictive one, because you would obviously want to meet the most restrictive arrival time window that you've defined for that customer, for that work order. As I said, I won't show entitlement at this time, just not quite ready yet, but it should be shipping in January. With that, I will turn this over to Eamon for technician productivity.
Thanks, Jason. So let me just make sure the slideware is where I want it to be. Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Eamon O'Brien. I'm the owner for the technician productivity area. So this encompasses anything that we're doing to basically enable technicians to get their job done better in the most simplistic terms. So this encompasses any of our mobile solutions. We have a dedicated field service mobile application. It also encompasses things like our work we're doing within mixed reality. So any integrations that we're doing with, for example, the remote assist application, Dynamics 365 Remote Assist, and other future-looking scenarios. So anything in that arena. What I'll be covering are some new features that are either out in product today or coming out within a month or so. And I'll try to make it clear which ones are in which of those buckets. And then I'll go ahead and hop into some demos on some of the new features. So I'm just waiting for the slide to show for you all. Looks like... Okay, there we go. Great. So on the slide, we're just talking, I want to cover the new mobile application that we have that's in preview right now, and it'll be coming out of preview and being generally available within a week or so on Android and Windows, and then iOS sometime thereafter. So today on the various app stores, we have a somewhat confusing story in that we have two applications today. We have Field Service Mobile 2016, and then we also have Field Service Mobile 2017. Each of these is targeted at a specific version of the field service solution. And what we've done is we've allowed for us to have one application that can target any future version of our field service solution going forward, as opposed to having to put out some new version when there's some schematic change. And so that's something that architecturally we worked out. And now we're just going to have the one field service mobile application going forward. So when you see this on the App Store, please ignore the 2016, 2017 ones and make sure you're downloading and using the field service mobile app going forward. It'll be working on version 7.5.5 of the field service solution, and then also 8.2 plus. So the 8.x series of the field service solution is the one that's on the unified interface. We shared a link in the chat that will allow for you to opt into getting onto the unified experience, and then you could also be using our new mobile application. As I said, it's in preview right now. You can directly find it on the Google Play Store by just searching Field Service Mobile, because we have it in an open beta on there. And then on Windows and iOS, you'll need to go to the links on this slide right here, and you'll be able to get to those. But as I said, we'll be making the app publicly available on the stores in a very short time. We're going through the final sort of validation phase on the various stores and some testing. And we've had it in preview for the past couple of months, been working directly with customers who are implementing on this. So we've been encouraging anyone who is a new customer to definitely get on the new application. And so please, if you have any implementations that you just started or you have ones that are coming up and you need mobile, you need offline for field service, please make sure that you're using the new field service mobile application. And if there's any questions around this, please reach out to me directly. I'll send my email over the chat. But yeah, if there's any issues, any questions, please reach out to me directly. So what else is important? So as the veterans of field service and field service mobile on the call likely know, our mobile application is built atop two frameworks. It's built atop Xamarin, our first party framework, and then a third party framework from our partner company, Resco, from a partner of ours, Resco. And so our new mobile application is on the latest version of those frameworks, and as such, we've really modernized the application and brought it to the forefront, and we'll continue to keep it up to date with any updates coming in from those frameworks. So that was one pain point a lot of our customers had, in that we'd have partner applications that were getting ahead of our own because we weren't continuously updating it, because architecturally it was hard to merge in updates from the frameworks into our app, because we were mingling within the frameworks themselves. So what we've done is we've really taken our hands off of modifying the framework and putting all of our customizations for field service into like JavaScript and XMLs that the underlying app code consumes. So you can get our customizations and whatnot for our field service mobile app at that link on the screen, aka.ms/fsmobileproject. And so, again, for the veterans who are familiar, we have a configuration tool where you create a mobile project, and then that gets synced down to the mobile application, and that basically dictates what the end user sees. And so, if you're doing a implementation and you need field service mobile, you need offline, use our project, import it into the configuration tool, and then go ahead and sync that down to your application. And then there's some other config steps that will need to be done. And David will be talking about at the end of our presentation some documentation where you can go to get up and running, because there are some initial configuration steps. And then he'll be sure to share a link that can take you all there. So the short of it is, if you need offline for field service and you have a new customer or you have someone who's upgrading, get them to upgrade or implement on one of these new versions of the field service solution, and then make sure they're using the new field service mobile application. And so this next slide, I want to just talk through something that is in product today, and this we shipped out several months back, and this is the ability to associate any 3D content that you have with customer assets. So what we find is that a lot of our customers who actually manufacture their products, or even if they don't manufacture them, they're sitting on a huge collection of CAD data. So computer aided design applications like Autodesk and so on. And there is a huge opportunity to enable field folks who could use, very complex schematics or even simplified schematics of assets and products when out in the field. It's essentially a untapped reservoir of knowledge articles, right? 3D knowledge content, essentially. So what we now allow for you to do is, if you go in and you have a customer asset, you can have it associated with some set of 3D content. And so basically we have a relationship, an end-to-end relationship between customer asset and the three-dimensional model entity. And if you go ahead and open up a customer asset and click three-dimensional models, you'll be able to relate 3D models that you've imported. And what you can do once you've imported those 3D models is you can view them in browser. You can view them on the mobile application. I'll show that in a demo. And you can go ahead and move them around, zoom in, zoom out, and it also supports animated 3D models. So of the 3D file formats that we support today are just GLTF, GLB, and OBJ. You'll see across all of Microsoft applications, everyone's converging on the GLTF and GLB file formats. This is because from a design perspective, they have a lot of benefits: open source file format, graphics library, transmission format. And so that's why we're supporting these today, but we are looking at also expanding to supporting native file formats from various CAD programs, so like IGES and so on, because that's an ask that we get from customers. And of course, there's a lag right now in terms of there's a gap right now in terms of a very straightforward pipeline to get customers' CAD content into Dynamics, but we're working very closely. I'm working very closely with the. We have a Simplygon team in Microsoft. Simplygon, for those who don't know, that's the company Microsoft acquired about a year ago or so, and they do polygon mesh reduction. So they have a service that you can hit and basically point to some 3D file, and it'll reduce the file size of it, the poly count of that 3D model, and basically allow for it to run a lot smoother and be a lot more simplified. If anyone's familiar with Fortnite, the game that's taking the world by storm, they actually use Simplygon to reduce the poly count of their models within the game. So that's something that we will be getting to, and I would love any feedback or thoughts you all have on this. So again, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat. If you have any customers who have sitting on a whole bunch of CAD data, we're looking for folks to work with and really get that pipeline that I mentioned is a gap right now going. So please feel free to reach out, and would love to learn about any customers you're working with on that. So this next slide covers a feature that is coming out with version 8.3 of the field service solution, and that should be rolling out to all the various regions this week. And what we basically allow for you to do now is, out of the box, when you're using field service, you'll be able to turn on this feature if you so choose. It'll be off by default. But if you do turn it on, basically anytime you go ahead and you have a work order with some service account, when you schedule a booking against that work order, the service account for that work order, there will be a geofence created for that service account. So as you know, a service account has an address, and if you geocode that, it'll have a latitude and longitude. And so what we'll do is we'll create a geofence record. That's a new entity that's being introduced with the geofence management solution, which is shipping with field service. And that record will get created at the latitude and longitude of the service account. And then also what will happen is for the bookable resource on that booking, we're going to be looking at that bookable resource's location. So with our mobile application today, you can enable Geo Auditing, so that anytime that the user opens up Field Service Mobile, his or her location gets logged to the server. And we have a table out of the box that data gets funneled into, but you can also alternatively create your own custom table where maybe you have a customer who has a telematics system where they're already getting location data. So independent of where you dump that data into, you can have the bookable resources location mapped to that. And so basically we're looking at, okay, the location, the latitude, longitude of the service account for that work order, and then the current location of the bookable resource. And so then what happens is that when the bookable resource's latitude and longitude is within some radius of that geofence that you define, we're going to go ahead and fire off and create a geofence alert record. So this geofence alert record will indicate, is it an exit or entry event? So is the resource entering or exiting the geofence? And then you can have any logic that you please get triggered off of that. Out of the box, we're going to have some workflows that will do things like send a push notification to the technician when he or she enters the geofence to say, hey, you're on site, now you should update your status, for example. And I'm getting ahead of myself a bit here, but push notifications is something that is also a new feature, and I'll be covering that in one of the next slides. But basically the idea is you have these geofences getting created for service accounts, you have location data for your bookable resources, and you can do whatever you want in terms of geofence events. So this is really rich, and I'm really excited about this. Really hoping to see some cool use cases come out of this beyond what we're shipping out of the box, because we think there are a lot of scenarios there. The main one I've heard from customers is generally, hey, we have a lot of folks who they simply forget to update their status when they're on site or when they're leaving the site, and that can result in issues around logging, invoicing, and so on. But really excited about this and happy to hear, would love to hear any other thoughts or scenarios you all can think about this. And the really cool thing about this solution is that it's not tethered to field service. So it's not explicitly tied to field service. We've built it out in an abstract way such that field service extends the core geofencing functionalities, but you can even model your own geofensible entities. So, you could say, like, maybe you want opportunity to be geofenced in some way, and you actually don't want to use bookable resource, you want to use something else. So that's all completely possible. So the next feature is push notifications. So this is becoming available with the v.8.3 release, and it'll also be available on version 7.5.5. And note, this will only work with our field service mobile application, the new one, not the 2017 or 2016 legacy ones. So refer to the slide I had earlier in terms of getting access to that. And if you get access to that, what you'll be able to do is we're now shipping a workflow activity that you can have a workflow defined that says, like, for example, when a user gets assigned a booking for a work order, send a push notification with some message that you define to that user. And then that notification will show up on the technician's phone if the technician has Field Service Mobile installed, showing the message that you dictated. And then you can also even have buttons on that notification that say, hey, update status, etc., and it can deep link into the application and take you to some specific context. And so out of the box, we're going to ship a workflow that does what I just said in terms of sending a notification when assigned a booking, and you can modify that. You can add your own work orders, your own workflows. The key thing is we have a workflow action for sending push notifications. This next feature, background location sharing, this is something that'll be coming out in the January timeframe. Right now, today in our application, you can log location data when the user has the app open and on the screen. It does not yet log it when the app is closed or minimized or the screen is locked. So we're going to start supporting this functionality with January. And that'll just make these geofencing features and so on a lot more valuable, because you're getting a more constant stream of data, as opposed to the past where it was basically anytime the user was modifying records or had the app open and on screen. And now I'll just quickly jump into a demo. I don't have a lot of time, so I'll just try to breeze through this and show the application. One moment. Looks like I'm having issues with sharing. David, maybe while I'm just getting this up, do you want to quickly give a spiel about documentation?
Yeah. So the first thing is the field service product team is closely monitoring the Yammer groups. And if you do have questions, either technical or not, I would say posting in the Microsoft Field Service Yammer group or the CRM Partner Connect Partner Yammer group is a really great place to start, because the field service experts will weigh in inside and outside of the company. So other than that community-based solution sharing, we are investing heavily in docs.microsoft.com. And for those of you who have been there recently, you can see that it's growing. We're coming out with about 2 to 3 articles per week. And we're actually about midway through documenting all of the features that you're seeing today. And I'm going to be sharing links to each of those in the chat. Now, we also do have one question here, Eamon, while we have you. Does the new mobile app support multi-factor authentication?
Unfortunately, I think Eamon is restarting his Skype to get better connection.
Oh, okay. So let me go ahead and post some of these learning materials.
Yeah, to add to what David said about our Yammer community, which we are very active in monitoring, there's also a great LinkedIn field service related community that folks should take a look at. Not only do we, from the engineering team, monitor that and pay attention to that and try to answer questions as appropriate, but there's a huge number of incredibly knowledgeable field service users who are also on there. So there's a lot of great questions and great content, great ideas that folks are sharing up there. So to add to what you said about the Yammer group, check out the LinkedIn group as well.
So looking here at a few of the questions, will connected field service still need to be installed as a separate solution? So no, you don't need to install the separate connected field service solution. At that point, you really just have to set up IoT Central or IoT Hub and connect it to your Dynamics instance.
Yeah. The other thing worth noting there is it will still be a separate solution. However, the package deployer for field service will include it directly. So small distinction.
Question here about experiencing audio issues. I am not. Is the new mobile app customized by Resco Woodford? Yes, you still need to use Woodford to configure it, but you'll also need to use the new mobile project that is linked to in this documentation. So you won't be able to use the old mobile project. You'll have to use the new one, and you're still going to be using Woodford to customize and configure.
And if I can just speak to one thing on that. So what we are going to be doing is actually out of the box with the field service package, much like we're doing with what we're doing with CFS, is we're going to be shipping our own version of the configuration tool that is now known as Woodford as our field service mobile configuration tool. And this will come out of the box with field service so that you don't need to go off to our partner's website to download that and then import and install. And then we'll also have it so that our project is just automatically within that tool when you first open it up. So this is just something that we're working on now and should be coming out. I'm optimistic for like January, February timeframe. But for the time being, you will need to still import Woodford and request a single license to get your trial extended. David's going to be putting out on the documentation website all the details around the nuances on that. And now just very quickly, I apologize, had some issues with sharing my screen, but I can just walk through a very quick demo of the new application. So this is Field Service Mobile on Windows. Of course, we have support on iOS and Android as well, but just for simplicity, I'm demoing this on Windows. And you'll see we've completely refreshed the UI of the mobile app. We've got a new set of icons and so on. We've simplified the look and feel of it, and of course the branding and coloring to align with all of our Dynamics products. One thing I'll show that is generally very well received in demos is something that I talked about in terms of the 3D model feature we added in. So if you have some customer asset and you've associated it with 3D content, you can actually view that on mobile. So if you open up the customer asset here, you'll see any three-dimensional models associated with that. So the idea is that a technician shows up on site and can use some 3D content to actually complete a repair, as opposed to have to resort to simplistic PDFs and the like. So if you go ahead and open up this three-dimensional model, it'll go ahead and load, and you can interact with it, you can view it, and so on. And so this, for example, shows how you could disassemble this particular asset, which is actually from our friends over at NASA. And then I basically animated it. So this also runs on mobile, tablet, anything, not just desktop, which is very unique and powerful. And then another nice looking area is the booking area. Don't have a whole lot of data in here, but if you add in, if you have a booking against a work order with a specific service count, we're going to be showing all of that information on here, as you see on this particular booking. And then the status colors are also now changing based on the current status of the booking. So if you complete this, for example, it'll go to green and whatnot, and you can, of course, configure all of this. Another feature we've added in with this new application is the ability to scan a customer asset. So I can't do this on my laptop right here because then you'll just see my my partner in the other office, my colleague. But if you click this and you scan, it'll kick off a camera, works on mobile or a tablet, and then you can scan a QR code for some customer asset. So, for example, if you have some customer asset that technician shows up on site, wants to quickly scan it and get all the history of that, any related work orders for that, you can go ahead and scan that QR code and then have that displayed. We'll have information on docs in terms of how to configure all of that. That's all I think I have time to show, but yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Eamon. There was one question here. Does the new mobile app support two-factor authentication?
So the new mobile application will support two-factor authentication. What is in preview right now does not yet, but we have that on our very immediate term roadmap, and we'll be getting that configured within a month, I'd say. So please reach out to me directly, and I can key you into the work for that. We have a number of engineers working on that and making sure we get that out there.
Awesome. So thanks everyone for joining. We have a few more minutes here, so feel free to post any remaining questions.
One thing, David, I forgot to touch on around mobile. So for the old timers in the room who are again familiar with field service mobile and how you have to have a mobile project configured. So there is work to be done for any customers who have a mobile project, a Woodford project, and want to get onto the new application. So essentially what needs to be done is that the customer needs to understand what they customized off of our original project, and then basically port those customizations over to our new project. So we're going to be putting on docs.microsoft.com some guidance around that, but there is a degree of manual work to basically port over any customizations on a project. But we're going to be working to have very clear guidance on docs.microsoft, so keep an eye out on that.
Awesome. So just give another moment here, see if there's any shy people who want to ask one last question. Let's see, while we're waiting, MultiResource Scheduling, which is a really huge update for both Universal Resource Scheduling and Field Service. We're actually going to have a detailed documentation on that released by end of day tomorrow. And that's going to be on the Field Service and the Universal Resource Scheduling docs page. Manual inventory journals, more detailed documentation coming next week. 3D content for customer assets. We're hoping to have this in the next few weeks as well, including some sample 3D files. And the rest, probably near end of December, beginning of January, you'll see detailed documentation. But all these features really increase the addressable market for field service and technician productivity. So really excited about it. So with that, we see one last question here. What's the best way to version control a RESCO project? Is that what you're mentioning, Eamon, a derivative?
So I was just writing a response to that question. So what we do internally is we actually have our project checked into a repo, and we use Git version control. So if you download a project, you get a zip file with a .woodford extension. If you right-click that, if you change that to .zip and then right-click extract, you'll get all the contents of the project in XML format and whatnot. And then you can check that into a repo, and then actually starting to do version control. But what we're hoping to do is have a private repo that has our Woodford project checked in, and then customers can basically go to that repo. For customers who have very complex customizations and they want more of a developer experience for porting over, allowing for them to use that repo to basically branch off and do customizations like that. So I'm going to respond to the person who asked that question in the chat and just give my email. And please, anyone else who is interested in that, email me, and I can maybe get you preview access to that functionality if you're finding it useful.
Awesome. Another question here from Dave Mannion. When will multi-resource scheduling be available for RSO? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we haven't committed to a date of this. We would be hoping in 2019, but I don't think it's been committed yet.
Yeah, obviously something we're really aware of, and the scheduling team is working to provide, but much more complex when you start talking about at large, at scale for a big organization with lots of resources and potentially many multi-resource or resource requirement groups, I should say. So unfortunately, I don't have a timeline for that at this moment. But as soon as we have more information, we'll of course share.
All right. Geofencing for opportunities. Eamon, I wouldn't see this as something we'd be supporting as opportunities as in a field service entity.
Yeah, but I think the attendee is just brainstorming, and I invite that really because the solution that comes with FS is abstract, and so you can use it for other scenarios, and I highly encourage that. Out of the box, it's tuned for field service. The idea I think around opportunities is that if you're somehow, maybe you have some marketing solution, you're getting Twitter data from customers, and somehow you have their location from that. Then you could maybe understand like, hey, this customer right now is inside my store, and they're within the geofence for that store location. So maybe you want to send them like a text or an email or something that says, hey, we saw that you just checked in here. Would you like to buy some products? Probably equally creepy as equally good potential for selling stuff. But I leave that to all of your creative minds to come up with exciting stuff. And please feel free to reach out to me with ideas because this is a brand new thing. We have it defaulted to off because we want to first take more feedback and whatnot as we bake it out further. So please, we're very open to any feedback.
Yeah, one thing to add to around geofencing, so we obviously are shipping some specific scenarios, but one thing we aren't shipping, which is a minority case, but I've heard a number of times, is organizations that are more interested in servicing an asset at an asset location. So they update the work order geolocation with the asset's location. So that's maybe a more natural use case for a field service scenario, but obviously Eamon's talking, this is not specifically enabled for field service. It could be used elsewhere as well. But from a field service perspective, some organizations may be more interested in geofencing around an asset, as an example.
Good question from Pierre. I just saw. Do we have any limitations on mobile entities like leads in the new mobile application? So no, if you go to the licensing guide, we've updated the wording to reflect that for the new field service mobile application, so long as you're using it in the context of Dynamics 365 for field service, so that means like going and working on customer assets, scheduling resources on work orders and so on. You can use any number of entities that you like, any sales entities and so on. What field service mobile should never be used for is for a sales persona, so for a persona who goes out in the field just to do sales work. It's all about field service. And if there's a scenario where a technician also needs to maybe create a lead for an upsell opportunity or something like that, then totally, they can do that in field service mobile. So take a look at the licensing guide. We've updated the wording there. This does not apply to the 2016 and 2017 applications.
And by the way, Pierre, this slide deck will include links to the latest licensing guide. So when the video is posted, the slide deck will also be posted with links to the licensing guide that Eamon mentioned. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. And if you have any other questions that come up, I would say please shoot us an email or even go to the Yammer community groups, and we can respond there. So thanks a lot, Eamon and Jason and Michelle, for organizing this.
And David, maybe just be sure to include those links in the posting, the Yammer groups and whatnot.
Yeah, let me do it again. It's earlier in the chat.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.